But we're going to get started here. Let's just get a quick feedback from you as a group in terms of potential impacts, because there was a major impact assessment done on this project. What sort of economic, social or environmental impacts might you think a project of this size, 20,000 people in one development coming into this area might include? Should we start with economic? What sort of economic costs and benefits? So the people who were, what did I say? The people who were environment last time are economic this time. Jobs, thank you, yeah. There was something else over here. School, did someone say?
Yeah.
So new facilities might come in as part of that. That could almost be included in a social impact as well, social benefit. Yep. Yeah, good. I haven't seen what the regional analysis was, but definitely if you live in one of those small hamlets that Christine was talking about before, maybe those facilities are closer to you now. Yep. What about environment? What sort of costs or benefits might be on the environment here?
Deforestation.
Sorry?
Deforestation.
Yeah.
Pollution.
I think, good point. So a lot of this area was cleared, but some of it wasn't. And in particular, there were some concerns going up to the national level. Anyone want to take a guess at what they might be? Threatened species, yep.
Also biodiversity.
Yep. Yeah. So the two big ones, there are a couple of threatened species here. There's a frog, the Wallam sedge frog, and the Ramsar wetlands, the potential impact on Ramsar wetlands. So both of those straight away ratchet up to the national level, and so any development here is going to have to think about some of those impacts. Do you want to do a very quick what happens in an EIS, EIA?
Certainly. So an environmental impact assessment is covered by legislation both at the state level and at the Commonwealth level. And you will often hear it now referred to as ESIA instead of EIA, the S being social, but under legislation, EIA still means little e environment, little s social, so nomenclature, don't worry about it. The environmental impact assessment is done at the project concept stage. Projects are done at a conceptual stage with pre-feasibility, then they go to feasibility stage where they have more certainty on costing and the engineering, and then it goes into implementation, and then it goes into operation. So at that early stage of development, you'll have the environmental impact assessment done. And it generally follows a process of identifying what is here as a baseline. So it'll be the physical environment, the biological environment, and the social environment, and they will have various subsets to them. So under physical, it'll be the climate, it'll be the soils, it'll be the geography, it'll be the water, groundwater and surface, etc., etc. Ambient noise, air quality, and then at the the ambient noise. At the biological level, it'll look at the flora and fauna, terrestrial and aquatic, and whether there are any listed species that are listed through various Red Book or other listings, national, state, international. Once the and then of course there's the social. So the social will look at what was here initially, nothing really socially or very little, but it also looked from a regional and state sense. So what is going to be the impact of this development on the local social strata? And that will be on everything from transportation networks, education, health, safety, policing, demographics, where people are coming from, where they're going to, what their work is, household incomes, a whole range of issues covering the social side of things. So once they've done the baseline assessment, then they overlay that with what the project is. So the next part of the ESIA or the EIA will be a description of what the project is, its physical and temporal attributes. So how big is it? When is it going to be built? Is it going to be built in phases? What are the design aspects of it? Is it going to involve roads, houses, sewer, all of those things, recreation? So we then take what is the project, we overlay that on the physical, biological, and social environment, and the next step then is what are the impacts that are going to be derived or accrued as a result of this new physical impact on top of those baselines. And so we identify those impacts, and as some of you pointed out now, there's impacts on species, on biodiversity. There's no doubt impacts on the social side. Some comments were made on the transportation, where you've got 20,000 people put into an area where there henceforth or heretofore hadn't been, significant population trying to get onto the Bruce Highway or into the regional areas. So all of those impacts are identified. The next step in the impact assessment is how do you avoid or mitigate those impacts. So for things like biological issues, you can often avoid by not building in certain areas. So you'll see on the maps that there were conservation zones that had been established, the no-build areas. From a mitigation point of view, the mitigation would kick in right from the design and implementation or the construction side, right through, well, in this case, the operations would be accommodation, residential area, which would come under the requirements of state or regional planning in terms of noise and other things. So the primary impacts here are the existence on an area that was a natural environment, and the impacts from construction. So it would be impacts to groundwater, impacts to surface runoff, impacts to wildlife or any of the natural areas that are going to be altered or removed. And then the mitigation for that will be to preserve areas, to avoid them, to construct in such a way as you're not going to be creating sediment runoff into surface waters, to have groundwater recharge, and I think Paul will talk more about the sunken drains, and to ensure that if there were other nearby residences, that during construction that noise would be kept within certain levels at certain times of the day or times of the week. Once the mitigation is identified, the next step is to do the environmental and social management and monitoring plan. And so that is the plan that lays out what are the impacts, what is the mitigation, who's going to be responsible for putting that mitigation into effect, who's going to be checking on that or monitoring it, how often is the monitoring going to be done, and what is the monitoring going to be. So is there going to be air quality monitoring? What is the frequency? Is there going to be water quality, either surface or groundwater? Is there going to be dust monitoring? Because in a large open area like this, if you're creating dust and it's going off onto farms or other local areas, then you want to be ensuring that that's not the case. And so all of these monitoring attributes are carried out over the course of the project. In a typical impact assessment, you would also look at cumulative impact assessment. And increasingly cumulative impact assessment, it is the most difficult part of an impact assessment, but it's also one of the more important ones, because as we see regional developments happening, we see loss of biodiversity and impacts on social strata as a result of death by 1,000 cuts. So every new project has its own impacts. And traditionally, we have just looked at one project and the impacts of that project in isolation. And increasingly, it's becoming more and more necessary to look at them collectively. What is my project going to do relative to all of the other planned or existing projects in a region? And then you define what those cumulative impacts are. And are there additional things that then have to be done as part of the mitigation? And more often than not, they fall within government's purview because you as the project developer don't have the authority or the capabilities of addressing that. Another aspect of the impact assessment is the effects of the environment on the project. The impact assessment itself is dealing with the effects of the project on the environment, but there are also aspects of the environment on the project, and we've just seen this last week with the tail end of Debbie coming through here. So are we building in a floodplain? So if we are, well, maybe we shouldn't be, but those are the sort of things that you'd be looking at. Is climate change going to have an impact in the future on this location by rising sea levels and other things? And so that also should go into the design of the project. One of the things that runs through the whole impact assessment from very early concept right through to completion and into operation is public stakeholder consultation. We have to, as scientists, we're pretty smart people, but we don't know everything. And so public and stakeholder consultation is a way to ensure that we design the project and operate the project with the best interests of not only the environment and the social strata, but also those other people who have an opinion on what is best for them, what is best for the region. And that gets tied up into a document, and these impact assessments for developments like this and industrial processes are put together by large multidisciplinary teams of engineers, biologists, social scientists, hydrogeologists, so you name it, they're involved, the consultation specialists. And the documents end up being, well, increasingly in the thousands of pages. Too big for any one person to sit down and digest, but when it goes to government, government will have a team of biologists, ecologists, social specialists, communication specialists that do the review. Ready to go?
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we'll continue the conversation on the bus. A little bit conscious of time, so Dan has parked the bus just over here on